Modern science revealed the true color of Tyrannosaurus rex. The most disturbing detail appears only at journey's end. Listen. Beneath silence of stone, an eye opens. Yellow, slit, older than any forest you have ever walked. A low growl moves through the mist, and for a moment, 66 million years collapse into a single breath. This is the face of the king of the Cretaceous. Until this year, no one knew its true color. For a century, museums painted him in shades of guesswork: gray, olive, swamp green, a creature reduced to shadow. But modern science lifted that veil. Beneath bone, inside microscopic structures, the true palette of T-Rex was waiting. What it reveals is not what the films promised. To see it, travel 66 million years back. Imagine a planet you would not recognize. Continents drift closer. A warm, shallow sea cuts North America in two. The air is thick, humid, heavy with the breath of conifer forests that stretch from horizon to horizon. The skies are not always blue. Distant volcanoes paint them with bands of ash and gold across the horizon. Nights warmer than ours, days longer with light. This is the late Cretaceous, the closing act of the Mesozoic, a lost world ruled by giants whose names we whisper with reverence, and whose king is about to wake. Subscribe to continue the journey into a world that no longer exists. The next chapter awaits. Don't miss it. In these forests, ferns grow taller than a man, and magnolias bloom for the first time in planetary history. Insects the size of birds drift between trunks, while horned dinosaurs migrate in slow, deliberate herds toward distant rivers. Their footprints sink deep into ancient mud that will one day harden into stone, preserving every step they took. It is a world of color, brilliant, layered, alive. Yet for centuries we pictured it in muted browns. Color, unlike bone, was thought unknowable. Fossils preserve hard things: teeth, skulls, vertebrae, the architecture of ancient life. Pigment is fragile, soft chemistry of light itself. When millennia press down, color is the first thing to vanish. For 200 years, the color of dinosaurs belonged to the imagination of artists, not to the discipline of science. Until a single fossil whispered something no one expected. Enter the king, Tyrannosaurus rex, the lost world's terror. 12 meters from snout to tail, weighing as much as a small house, standing on legs built for thunder. His skull alone stretches longer than the height of a grown human, a fortress of bone designed to dominate. His banana-sized teeth, deeply serrated, are designed not to slice flesh apart, but to crush bone into splintered shards. His bite, measured by modern engineers, exceeds 50,000 newtons. No animal on Earth today comes anywhere close. He sees in stereo, his forward-facing eyes echoing an eagle's, a wolf's, smelling fresh blood across distant kilometers. His olfactory bulbs are enormous, tuned to chemistry on the wind. He hears low frequencies traveling through dense forest. He is not a lumbering monster shaped by myth. He is a sensory weapon, evolution's most precise predator yet. For 100 years we dressed him in the wrong skin. Gray-green, scaly, reptilian in the dullest possible sense. A movie monster cast in concrete. A portrait born of assumption rather than evidence. We simply assumed wrong. We assumed he was huge, so he must look like a crocodile. Ancient, so he must have been drab. The first doubts began quietly in laboratories far from the spotlight, where paleontologists studied preserved feathers of smaller dinosaurs. They noticed something extraordinary. Tiny structures, no larger than a thousandth of a millimeter, embedded within the fossilized tissue. Sausages and spheres of organic shadow, melanosomes, the very pigment-carrying capsules that color every living bird today. Microscopic structures held a hidden palette, and the story widened. Tyrannosaurus rex did not stand alone in his epoch. He shared his world with a parade of contemporaries, each one a clue to his own true appearance. Triceratops moved in slow herds along the floodplains. Free horns lowered, broad frill raised against approaching predators. Edmontosaurus, the dog-billed giant, grazed in groups of hundreds, their resonant voices echoing across the misted marshes. Ankylosaurus dragged his armored club through the undergrowth, while Pachycephalosaurus, dome-skulled, butted heads in clearings of fern. Among them moved smaller theropods, cousins of the king, some no larger than a turkey, many wearing feathers. In the cold forest of what is now China, paleontologists uncovered Yutyrannus, a relative of Tyrannosaurus, 9 meters long. Covered head to tail in primitive feathers, long, filamentous, almost downy, not for flight, but for warmth, for display, for camouflage. DeLong, another early tyrannosaur cousin, revealed the same secret. The evidence mounted, they wore plumage. But did the king himself wear feathers? Skin impressions from adult Tyrannosaurus specimens tell a more complicated story. Recovered from Montana and Saskatchewan, patches along the tail, the hip, the neck appear scaled, pebbled, reptilian. But these patches are small fragments, they do not cover the whole body. Between them, the possibility remains. A juvenile rex, smaller and more vulnerable, may have worn a downy coat for warmth and concealment. The adult, massive and thermally self-regulating, may have shed most of it as he grew into a giant. A mosaic of skin, scales below, feathers above, varying with age, region, and the climate of the world. The climate itself shaped the answer. The forests of Hell Creek were warm but deeply seasonal places. Long dry spells, sudden floods, dappled canopies breaking sunlight into shifting patterns of gold and deep shadow. An apex predator hunting in such a place would not be neon. He would not be flat gray. He would be a creature of dapple, of broken light, of edges that blur against bark and fern. Camouflage is not decoration, it is survival, even for the biggest hunter who ever walked the earth. Yet the real twist came from beneath the sea, where another mystery was still waiting to surface. While terrestrial fossils argued, a quieter revolution unfolded in marine paleontology. Ancient oceans preserved their giants in remarkable detail. Mosasaurs, the swimming serpents of the late Cretaceous. Ichthyosaurs, dolphin-shaped predators of an earlier age, both fossilized. In Europe's black shales and the chalk of Kansas, scientists discovered fossilized skin with traces of pigment still intact. The results were stunning. These marine reptiles wore countershading, dark across the back, pale across the belly. The same pattern worn today by sharks, by penguins, by killer whales, breaking the body's silhouette from above. A pattern that thermoregulates, that camouflages, that endures. And the melanosomes themselves told the color of the ancient. Because in modern birds, the shape of a melanosome predicts the hue it produces with surprising precision. Long, narrow capsules yield deep black. Round capsules yield reddish-brown. Flat, hollow forms produce shimmering iridescence. By carefully measuring fossil melanosomes under electron microscopes, paleontologists could now reverse-engineer the palette of the long dead. The method was tested, validated, refined, applied first to feathered dinosaurs like Anchiornis, whose coloration was reconstructed in detail. Black wings, white flecks, a reddish crown. A creature walking the late Jurassic forests in confirmed plumage. The same lens was finally aimed at the king. Picture him now, dusk in Hell Creek's forests. The light is failing, the air carries the smell of river mud and decaying autumn leaves drifting past. A herd of Edmontosaurus moves through the trees, unaware. Among the trunks, something massive silently begins to shift. Not a sound, not a snap, just the slow, terrible displacement of shadow across the dim forest floor. Tyrannosaurus rex does not chase, he ambushes. Biomechanics suggest his top speed was modest, perhaps 20 km per hour. He was not built for the marathon. He was built for the strike. A single explosive lunge from cover, jaws locking, bones cracking, prey collapsing before it understood. For an ambush hunter, color is not mere vanity. Color is the difference between a meal and starvation. The wrong hue, and the herd scatters into the trees. The right hue, and you become the forest itself. This is where modern science focused its most powerful instruments. Fragments of Tyrannosaurus skin from the legendary specimens nicknamed Sue and Stan were subjected to detailed spectroscopy. Researchers searched for traces of keratin, the protein that builds scales and feathers, and for melanin, the universal pigment. They searched for any organic residue that had survived the long crushing pressure of 66 million silent years. And they found it. Not abundantly, not perfectly, but enough to begin reconstructing the lost colors of the king. The samples were compared to modern analogues: crocodiles for the scaled regions, cassowaries and ostriches for feathered remnants. Birds of prey informed the eye and beak chemistry. A pattern emerged, layer by layer, paper by paper. The king was not grey, he was not green. He was something else entirely, something deeper and stranger. Dark along the spine, pale along the belly. Countershading, exactly like the marine reptiles, like every successful predator. What science assembled next looked nothing like the dusty museums. Here, finally, is the verdict on the king. Tyrannosaurus rex wore a coat of muted amber and earth brown, deepening to near black along his spine ridge. The underside of his belly and throat was paler, bone-white, dust gray, the color of a dry riverbed. Across his flanks ran broken vertical stripes, irregular and dark, dissolving his body into the vertical grain of forest. His face carried something more surprising. Around the eyes and jawline, traces suggest a flush of reddish pigment, a warning color, a signaling color. The kind of mark that whispers to rivals, to mates, to prey. Dangerous. The eyes themselves were likely amber, yellow, sometimes streaked with the pale gold of a predator's hungry gaze. The pupils slit vertical, optimized for the half-light of dawn and dusk when ambush hunting reaches its lethal peak. The juveniles wore a different coat, lighter, downier, possibly striped more sharply than the adults, like young leopards. As they grew, they shed the down, they darkened, they became the storm-colored hunters of the lowland forests. This is not the lizard of old paintings, something closer to a bird of prey crossed with a tiger. Picture him now, properly, standing in the dappled gold of late afternoon, his back almost black against canopy shadow, his belly pale as dust against the sky for anything below, his face marked in the rust of blood. His eyes, two amber lanterns watching the ferns shift in the long shadows of the dying Cretaceous afternoon. He is beautiful, he is terrifying, he is real, in a way the grey monsters of our childhood never were. This revelation arrived just before the sky fell. The world that wore these colors had only moments left. In geological terms, the final act of Tyrannosaurus rex was instant. One ordinary morning over the warm, shallow sea. Somewhere above what today is the Gulf of Mexico, the sky tore open without warning, without mercy, without sound. An asteroid 10 kilometers wide, moving 20 kilometers per second, struck the shallow waters of Chicxulub in Yucatan. The impact released energy equal to billions of nuclear weapons. A wall of fire spread out at sonic speed. Tsunamis rose hundreds of meters tall. Molten rock was hurled into space and rained back down across the planet. It returned as glowing droplets, igniting forests on every continent. And then came the silence. Total, absolute, unending. For months, possibly years, the sky remained closed. Dust and sulfur veiled the sun. Temperatures plummeted. Photosynthesis collapsed. Every food chain shattered. The colored world, amber forests, jeweled lakes, dappled hunters, vanished beneath grey ash. A single dark line running through the stone of every continent, found by geologists today, marks that lost world. The king's hues vanished with him. The last Tyrannosaurus to walk the earth never saw the next spring.
The forests he had stalked turned to char.
The herds he had hunted turned to white bone. Within a few thousand years, 3/4 of all life on Earth was simply, irrevocably, completely gone. What remained was the fossil, a witness in stone that waited 66 million years for the right question. This is why the discovery matters. Not because color is decoration, but because color, in truth, is biography. The hue of an animal records its choices, where it hunted, what it feared, how it survived. To repaint Tyrannosaurus rex in his true tones is to recover a piece of a world that ash erased. Science is only beginning to repaint the lost epoch. The portrait of the king is now sharper than ever. A dark-spined predator in earth and amber, pale-bellied, rust-faced, amber-eyed, dappled with broken stripes for the half-light. A warm-blooded hunter with juvenile down, the sensory weapons of a raptor scaled to the dimensions of a bus. And this is only the beginning.
New tools are arriving every year, reshaping how we read the silent stone.
Proteomics, the study of ancient proteins, is pulling chemistry from fossils once thought to be inert stone. Synchrotron imaging maps the internal architecture of bones without ever cutting them, revealing structures hidden for ages. Artificial intelligence learns from every known skin impression, every melanosome, every preserved feather, to rebuild lost animals. The next decade will bring the true colors of Triceratops, of Velociraptor, of the long-necked titans of the Jurassic, of the swimming serpents of the late seas. The lost epoch is being repainted one species at a time. By instruments our ancestors could not dream of, subscribe to continue this journey into a world long lost. And one creature next in line may shock you more. Somewhere in the fossil archives, another predator's skin waits. A hunter older than the king, stranger still, wearing colors no human eye has yet dared to imagine. The next chapter of this journey will take you to meet him. Until then, subscribe, continue the journey, ring the bell to be there when the next chapter of Prehistoric World finally arrives at your screen. The next episode pulls you into the shadow of a predator that lived long before the Rex was born. In ancient seas the sun no longer reaches. The lost world is repainted, color by color, breath by breath. 66 million years after its sky fell silent, the king walks again. Not in grey, not in green, but in the true amber of the forest that swallowed him.